Hi, everybody. This is Charlene O'Hanlon, Managing Editor at DevOps.com and DevOps TV, and I'm here at day 2 of the DevOps Enterprise Summit in Las Vegas. And I am here today with some very smart people. To my immediate left is Carmen DeArdo, who is the Senior Value Stream Management Strategist at Tasktop, and John Smart, who is the former Head of Ways of Working at Barclays Group. Welcome, gentlemen. Thanks for joining me today.
Good morning.
Thank you.
So I'd like to talk a little bit about organizational change, because I know that that's something a lot of companies are struggling with, especially as they begin to maybe take the journey to DevOps. Some of the things that they have to grapple with in order to kind of maybe get everybody on board. So, in your experience working at Barclays Group and working with clients at Tasktop, what are some of the things that you've seen that have been roadblocks for companies as they start down their DevOps journey as it pertains to organizational change?
I think, from my perspective, one of the most important things is leadership. In fact, I think the 3 most important things are leadership, leadership, and leadership.
Okay.
And leadership will make it or break it, because you can have teams who are enthusiastically adopting DevOps, and if they don't have the support, but it's actually more than support. Mm-hmm. It's leaders actually need to change their behavior. We're into the age of digital, as per Carlota Perez, and ways of working need to fundamentally change across an organization in order to deliver better business outcomes. So one of the major impediments that I see is where a leadership team don't think they need to change their own behavior. Mm-hmm. So you can have a little bubble of agility and DevOps, but it won't get any further than the most senior leader who is actually changing their own behavior.
That makes sense.
Yeah, that's a great point, Jonathan. And I think, so here's like an example I've run into, right, is you have an initiative to accelerate delivery, and hopefully a lot of companies have something that's along the lines, sometimes someone will say, I'll talk to someone and they'll say, well, we're doing a DevOps transformation. And I sort of like to think of it as a journey, and I'll say, well, what's your goal? Because DevOps is not a goal, right? So hopefully your goal is you want to be more responsive to business, you want to be meaningful to the business, right? I think Jeffrey Stover, right, made a great talk about a point yesterday that if business sees you as a cost center, they want to cut you. If they see you as a profit center, they want to invest in you. And I think, one of the issues you run into is, okay, we're going to let a team experiment. I talk about that a lot. Mm-hmm. But you truly then have to let them experiment, right? I go back to Deming a lot in quality circles, and the people doing the work know the most about how they can get better, right? Mm-hmm. And you have to actually create an environment where that can happen. And I think at times, and then, you can take that output and decide, okay, how do we try to optimize this across a large enterprise, right? But many times I sense, it's like if you come in with the answer, then the one thing I know, if you come in as an executive with the answer, then the one thing I know for sure is you don't have the answer.
And to the point around experimentation, as Carmen said, there's got to be the right environment to experiment, and that is, leaders have an enormous influence over that in terms of creating an environment of psychological safety.
Exactly.
So as per the Google Project Aristotle, where they looked at the characteristics of the high-performing teams in Google, what they found is that the members of the team do not correlate to performance. So who's in the team doesn't correlate to performance at all. The number one determinant of high performance was psychological safety. So the ability to fail without being shot, and also the ability to say, I don't know, the ability to experiment, again, not knowing. And I have seen this a lot where people are afraid to say they don't know. So someone might use like a catchphrase or a buzzword or an acronym, and someone won't admit they don't know what that acronym is for fear of looking stupid or silly or something. So psychological safety is super, super important, and intent-based leadership and transformational leadership and servant leadership, kind of 3 words for the similar thing. So the commander's intent. So the commander's intent is, this is the mission, this is the goal, as Carmen said, what's the outcome you're striving to achieve? And now you're free to achieve that however you see fit. So you're empowered to try to achieve that, running experiments, and failure is viewed positively as a learning. So there's the Westrum culture, there's pathological, where the messenger is shot, there's bureaucratic, which is in the middle, and there's generative, which is where messengers are not shot, but actually failure is viewed as a positive thing because now we've learned something.
So do you think this kind of reluctance to change is it just because we tend to fall into kind of the same old processes and the same old ways of doing things, or do you think it's a real reticence to change?
So 40% of all human behavior is habit.
Right.
So according to numerous scientific studies, 40% of all of the decisions we make every day in terms of system 1 and system 2 are automatic and not thought through. So it takes time to unlearn behavior. There's a limited speed of relearning for an individual and for a complex adaptive system that is a team or a business unit or a department or a group or a company. So there's a limited speed that people can change. So you have to start small. And in terms of the diffusion of innovation curve, you've got the early adopters on the left and you've got the laggards on the right. So you start with those that are already have the corresponding belief system and a growth mindset. People who are willing to take some risk to get better outcomes. And then you can start to build on that. And then people feel more, there's more psychological safety because someone else has already been there. They've gone first. And I think also the leadership tone is important. So again, as Carmen said, if a leader tells a group of people exactly what to do and exactly how to do it, then the locus of control is external. So I find this a fascinating topic. There's a thing called agentic state, which is the milligram experiments, where there's someone in a white coat with a stranger. There's a stranger in an electric chair, and the person in the white coat tells the person in this experiment to keep giving electric shocks to the complete stranger when they give a wrong answer to a question. And 65% of people give a fatal electric shock to a complete stranger because the person in the white coat tells them to.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so that's called agentic state, and that what happens there is that's because there's a human trait, which is if someone in authority, the white coat, tells you to do something, you absolve yourself of any responsibility, because the person in the white coat, the leader, the boss, said, you have to do this, I take responsibility for the outcome, you have to work this way, you have to adopt DevOps, you have to do whatever, and people will do it. But then the locus of control is external, so they're doing it with learned helplessness. So actually, you know what, if this all fails, the boss told me to do this, so actually I'm not taking personal responsibility for this, even though I think this is totally stupid and totally the wrong approach, I'm going to do it anyway. Even though I know this is wrong, I'm going to do it anyway. So that's not going to lead to a good outcome. That will not lead to change. As soon as that leader moves on, the elastic band will snap back into shape and the old behaviors will carry on. So the locus of control needs to be internal, and therefore it needs to be, here's the mission, now you figure out how to achieve it yourselves.
And I think, what I observed is a healthy outcome, if you're actually doing what Jonathan said, is, so here's the kind of conversations that teams had with me. They go, Gene or John, we during retrospectives, they never said anything, right? They did, they're great, they did their work, never said anything. Now all of a sudden, they have all these ideas of how we can improve. And they're talking about, well, when I was at this other company, we did this, and it's like, where did this come from? And so, you talk to a few of the people, and their feeling was, well, I didn't really think anybody cared here or would listen to me about what I thought we were doing, right? I think, as John just said, it's like, okay, I'm here now. This is the way things are done. I know better ways, but it's okay. I need to, especially if you have contractor people, right? I've seen great ideas come from contractor people who felt like second-class citizens, and all of a sudden, they had the experience because they had come from other places and say, well, I think this could work here, right? And you need to get through, I remember discussions that went sort of like, that will never work. And then I'd show like, a Barclays or a Capital One, or a Target or somebody from here a video. I actually used to play videos to people from this conference, right? Because it had a lot more weight, because it's like, okay, can't be done, well, let's just sit here and let's watch this video. Then it's like, well, it can't be done here, right? Well, then you get those early adopters who are on the corner of the 17th floor,
Right.
and then they come in and they tell their story. Well, then, okay, now what's the answer going to be, right? But again, it has to start. Then they start to feel, not that they didn't want to change, but they've been through this so many times, and it's like, this is the flavor of the month, right? Now they see, wow, and if you get people who before were kind of outspoken against it, and they start to talk positively, well, now they're the best change agent you could ever have in the world.
That makes total sense. So we need to have a clear goal in mind. We need to have leadership buy-in, not just buy-in, but actually espousing it and evangelizing DevOps.
Living it.
And I'd say behaving differently as well. So in the past, taking a Taylorist approach, there's been more of the kind of the management and the worker, and so it was really with Taylorism that the concept of managers and workers first really came to be, in terms of, I'm standing here with a stopwatch and a clipboard, and I'm telling you when to start working and when to stop working. Henry Gantt, as of the Gantt chart, worked with Taylor in the early 1900s and came up with the Gantt chart with Taylor. So the little line on the Gantt chart is actually, at the time it was called a man days quota. So if you're shoveling coal into a boiler to make steam, then that would tell you whether you'd shoveled enough coal for the day and whether you could go home. So Gantt charts are a tool of evil. They shouldn't be used. A tool of oppression. And from my perspective, so there are people who've got to senior positions in an organization with a command and control type mentality and behavior. And in an environment with very little change, that's, you can probably get away with that to a degree, although the level of engagement, I imagine, would be quite low with the people working in that area, and that's exactly what we see. When you look at all the Gallup surveys, I think it's Gallup, the chaos surveys, typically only about 30% of people at work are actively engaged, and quite a high percentage, I forget the exact number right now, are actively disengaged, sabotaging the company. So engagement levels have been super low, and I think in part it's because of command and control and people being told how to do their work, and not bringing their brain to work. So leaders need to change their behaviour, and this is intent-based leadership, servant leadership, transformational leadership, and need to create an environment for psychological safety, as we've said, articulate high alignment, what the goal is, but also, if leaders are expecting the teams, in terms of DevOps and agility, are expecting teams to work differently, behave differently, in terms of short and often delivery of value, in terms of flow, in terms of small multidisciplinary teams, in terms of conversation over contract, leaders need to do that as well. And an anti-pattern I've observed at a number of companies is where leaders kind of sit there with their arms crossed and say, "Go on then, organisation, transform. Tell me when you're done. My organisation, tell me when you're done. Come back in a year's time, and I expect you to be totally transformed." In the meantime, those individuals are not changing their own behaviour. So what I like to do now with the leadership team is actually to start with the leadership team, not start with a product development team. So leadership team are team number one, and get them standing up at a board, visualise the work in progress at a portfolio level. Often it's, oh my God, I didn't realise we had all of this in flight, because people are not actually aware of their system of work. And then just have a conversation from that point on. So then limit the work in progress, stop starting, start finishing, stop pushing more stuff through the pipeline, stop making hippo, highest paid person's opinion type decisions, stem the bleeding kind of at the top, and then work your way down a vertical slice. So then have the next level management team, next level management team, next level management team, depending on how many hierarchies there are, and then a team. Get that vertical slice working with cadences going all the way up at a regular basis, and then go sideways.
That makes total sense. We could talk about this all afternoon, but I know that you both have speakers. There's panels coming up. So I just want to thank Carmen and John for joining me today. Thank you so much. This is such a fascinating topic, so I appreciate the time you spent.
Thank
you.
you. Thank you.